How can a book with this premise be so good? Well, let me try to explain. Hi, I'm Øystein, and in this video we're talking about Haruki Murakami's What I Talk About When I Talk About Running. Firstly, I've never been that much into sports, but in 2019 I decided I wanted to do a marathon. And as a part of my training I bought this book in hopes to get motivated. Well, the motivation wasn't really the problem, my useless body was the problem. And I soon got injured, and since then I really didn't want to pick this book up because I was afraid of getting angry. But now I've been running for a month again and I decided to pick this book up before I got injured again. And I'm glad I did. And let me tell you, if you want to participate in a marathon or you just enjoy running, this book and the book Born to Run are the two books that you will hear about the most. This is at least my experience. The book is more a memoir than it is anything else, and Murakami himself calls it this in the book. It was published in 2007 and it's written from diary entries between 2005 and 2007. This isn't really a long book, but it covers a lot of territory. It starts when he talks about running a jazz bar, and then he decided he wanted maybe to write a book. Then he did, and it got published. And then he talks about one day he thought he would start running. He also talks a lot about which music he listens to when he runs. If I should try to sum this book up in one sentence, I would say that Murakami tries to explain why he does the things he does, while talking about how this relates to writing and running. Before I start talking about what I thought of the book, I thought I would just speak about the preface of this book, which I really loved. It was written by the Norwegian author Frode Gritten, and he basically says that no one really thinks about authors as people that does marathons and ultramarathons, but rather the miserable types that drink a lot of alcohol and does stupid things, and maybe people that wants to be alone. And the last one is the only thing that reminds us of Murakami himself. And I couldn't agree more, because when you think about artists in general, I usually think about people that are kinda miserable. Or at least they're not the healthy kind that think about what they're going to eat the day before they make a long run, for example. So that preface really made me think about artists and authors in general and what my prejudices are against them, which was really interesting, and I was off to a good start. So first of all, this is not a self-help book, even though some might think it is when they pick it up, because in no way does Murakami think that he is going to persuade you to take up running or even encourage you to take up running. He just discusses what he himself is experiencing when he runs and why he runs. Spoiler alert, it's because he likes it. The topic of running I find interesting because I think many have prejudices against, especially maybe middle-aged men that takes up running late in their life and decides to do a marathon. Some might view that as a crisis, but I find that Murakami is excellent at explaining why this is something people do. So Murakami seems to be the person that just wakes up one day and decides to implement something new into his life and let that be a thing that sticks with him for the rest of his life. And running is one of those things where he just decided one day to start running. And he hasn't looked back. I think mainly because he felt that his writing became much better, and he all the way through this book draw parallels between keeping the rhythm both in writing and running, and how you have to be concentrated for both, and the one helps the other. He also states that concentration is the biggest factor when becoming a writer, because if you haven't got concentration, you can have as much talent as you want, but you will never be a great writer. I think the part I like the most about this book is how the author describes himself, because that can be very funny at times. All from how he physically describes himself to how he describes himself as a person that few people might like. Because a big part of this book is about how he likes being alone and how he has no problem sitting by himself for hours on end just writing, and also the parts where he describes that he could never be a part of any team activity. He likes doing things by himself. It just seems so down to earth and honest, and he really doesn't sugarcoat anything at all. Even though this is not a self-help book, there are a lot of life lessons in it. And the one that sticks out is hard work pays off and consistency also. And this relates both to his writing and his running. And he talks about how he can never end a day of writing when he thinks that he has written all that he can. He has to have something that draws him back to the writing the day after. And this is very much a part of his mentality. He's definitely not the person that just writes a book in one go. He schedules all the things in his life and is a hard worker, which is very obvious when you read this book. This is my first book by Murakami and I really didn't know what to expect. The language was surprisingly easy to understand and engaging. I really liked the diary form in the book, where you could sort of go day by day forward in time, but also jump back in time to revisit some highlights of his career or big moments in his life. There are a few surprises in the book. It's all about consistency and hard work and his work ethic in general, but also his quirkiness that makes this book a funny read. The last thing that really stuck with me is how much I would have enjoyed having his life. But you'll have to read the book to understand why. But do you have any other Murakami books I should be reading? Which one should I be reading first? I really loved this book and I think I will be reading a lot more from him. Especially now that I know that this book didn't have a difficult language. I'm not afraid of going in and start reading some of his other books. So please recommend me one. And comment below if you read this one and want to share your thoughts. And thank you for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!